Schönen guten Abend. Ich bin Monika Li vom Literaturherbst Heidelberg und ich freue mich sehr, dass ich Sie heute als Erste begrüßen darf, denn diese Veranstaltung heute Abend ist eine Kooperation von ganz vielen und es liegt uns auch seitens des Literaturherbstes ganz besonders am Herzen und man sieht, welche schönen Synergieeffekte entstehen können, wenn man gemeinsam Kulturveranstaltungen initiiert. Und ich möchte auch die Anwesenden heute Abend hier begrüßen. Es ist eine große Ehre, dass Sie heute hier bei uns sind. It's such a great pleasure that you're here in Heidelberg. Und ich möchte gar nicht viele Worte machen, außer vielleicht noch dieses, der Festival-Themenschwerpunkt Freiheit. Dieses Buch, dieses bezaubernd schöne Buch, passt heute Abend ganz wunderbar hinein in unseren Festival-Themenschwerpunkt. Denn Freiheit erreichen wir als Individuen bestimmt auch nur, wenn wir Achtsamkeit mit uns selbst lernen. Und das werden wir, glaube ich, heute auch in diesem Buch erleben. Ich wünsche Ihnen einen wunderschönen Abend. Schön, dass Sie da sind und gebe jetzt sehr gerne weiter.
Herzlich willkommen. Welcome everyone, and especially welcome Lung Ying-tai and Monika Li. It is a remarkable day today. After some 7 years, Lung Ying-tai is back to the Institute of Chinese Studies. The day that our project World Making a Dialogue with China, that is actually inviting her, has been prolonged for another 2 years, and the day that Rudolf Wagner died exactly 4 years ago, without whom Lung Ying-tai would not be here. And so the 25th of October is a very special day. And the 25th of October 2023 is an even more special day. So I warmly welcome Lung Ying-tai. Now, she does not need an introduction here in Heidelberg. You all know that Lung Ying-tai is a writer, a literary critic, a public intellectual with a large number of devoted readers in her native Taiwan, but also, as you can see in this auditorium, elsewhere in the Chinese language world, in Hong Kong, in mainland China, in North America, and in Europe. You all know that she entered public service as Taipei City's government's first Minister of Culture in 1999, and that she served as Taiwan's first Minister of Culture between 2012 and 2014. You all know that she is an author of more than 24 books, including essays, short fiction, reportage, literary criticism, and that she has recently also published her, what she says, first full-scale novel. But you perhaps do not know that it was published with Drachenhaus Verlag, a publishing house that actually was founded by one of our own alumna, Nora Frisch, and that it was translated into German by someone whom you also might not know, Monika Li, also from Heidelberg, also an alumna of the Institute of Chinese Studies, whom I would now like to briefly introduce here because you don't know her perhaps. Born in 1985, and you will remember that year, it's a year of some significance, as you will hear in a minute. Born in 1985 in Heidelberg, Monika grew up bilingual. Not Chinese, no, German and Hungarian. And first trained as a teacher here in Heidelberg, studying German studies, philosophy, and then somehow took her internship at the German school in Shanghai and began to like Chinese and studied Chinese, won a scholarship to go to Taiwan, to National Taiwan University in 2009, and today lives with her family between Taipei and Berlin. And she was inspired by, I guess, the readings and the interests of her daughter, and therefore began translating Taiwanese literature into German, and latest she translated the book that we're talking about, 大雾山下. But back to Lung Ying-tai, who I don't really need to introduce, but who in 1985 published a book, the year that Monika was born, remember? Wildfire Collection, 野火记, which created this major cultural stir in Taiwan for its honest, for its introspective look at the social and political problems that were facing Taiwan society at the time. Her then documentary novel, 大江大海, Big River, Big Sea, Untold Stories of 1949, which was published in 2009, so exactly 60 years after the event, and which was partially translated and performed here in Heidelberg by students from Sinology and the Master of Transcultural Studies when Lung Ying-tai was last here in 2016. This book became a must-read in Greater China, despite the fact that it was soon banned in mainland China, as all of her books, which she takes pride in, I would say. Before her resignation, she was, between 2015 and 2020, a lecturer, distinguished fellow in humanities at the University of Hong Kong. She has a long history of association with Hong Kong, but also with Heidelberg University and the Institute of Chinese Studies. Thanks to Rudolf Wagner, she taught Taiwanese and world literature here for many years in the 1980s, 90s. Now, when we last had her here digitally, and some of you might remember this in May 2022, in our Encounters series with the Heidelberg Center for American Studies, we entitled the session Enfant Terrible, Minister of Culture, Silent Loner. And we will actually continue that conversation today along these lines as we discuss the translation of the novel Da Wu Zhan Xia. Why? Because traditionally, a Chinese intellectual has several possible positions. One of them is being an official. Second one is being a critic of government. That can be inside or outside, from inside or outside the government, enfant terrible. And the third one is to be looking at what is happening from outside. Like Zhuangzi was saying, famous Chinese philosopher who lived around the 4th century BC, Zhuangzi was saying that one would not want to wag one's tail in dirt if the government is bad, that is to say. So, official, enfant terrible, silent loner, and Lung Ying-tai has taken all of these positions. She wrote in 1975, when I went to the US for the first time, I went to the library, and by chance I got a book about Chinese history. That opened my eyes, and I thought, oh my God, what I was told before, that is in Taiwan, were all lies. She remembers how then in the mid-1980s, her father would call her every day just to make sure that she'd not been taken away by government spies because she was publishing this controversial column, Yehuo, Wildfire, in the China Times, which later becomes an essay collection. And in these essays, she criticizes Taiwan under white terror, government corruption, human rights violations, punched milk powder, etc., etc. And these essays have been considered the important milestones in the history of democratization in Taiwan, which until 1987 was under martial law. But they were also read on Tiananmen Square in Beijing in 1989. Now, Lung Ying-tai is born in a small fishing village on Taiwan as daughter of parents from the mainland, from Hunan, Mao's native province. She was educated in the US. She was resident of Europe for many, many years, where she raised her 2 sons, and Hong Kong, where she observed, as she says, the growing pains of that special administrative region. Lung Ying-tai has developed a distinct voice of cultural criticism that is informed by global perspectives. And she has never stopped calling on those around her. That was the title of her first piece that was basically written for Taiwan citizens. Where is your outrage? Where is your fanu? Why don't you cry out? And in the 1980s, that was sort of one of her titles. Please show me your civility was 20 years later the title of an essay she wrote to President Hu Jintao at that moment when she criticized him for stopping Bingdian, the magazine in 2006. So her voice continues to be heard even as or because she has resigned from Hong Kong University and moved down south as silent loner practicing solitude. There's a very nice collection of essays, 走路, from 2022, where she calls on everyone that you should be doing something crazy to go over the top at least once a year. 每一年做一件超过的事. That's what she's saying. She's urging us to do. Do what you want, not what you don't. And her voice as well as her silence, thus continues to resonate today on both sides of the Taiwan Straits and everywhere in the world, as you can see. And even if her writings are forbidden on the mainland, they circulate nevertheless. In her interventions, she fitfully connects the private and the public, and thus usually hits the nerves of her readers, as in her 2009 documentary novel, Big River, Big Sea, Dajiang Dahai, the story of a war, the civil war that killed 10 million people and that forced a mass exodus and divided many families across the Taiwan Straits. Her older brother, whom she meets for the first time in 1985, remains on the mainland, while her parents flee with Chiang Kai-shek, who would reign as a dictator for many decades to come on Taiwan. But her novel, or that documentary novel, is not the story of a particular war. It tells the story of war more generally, one especially pertinent today, as we see a war waging very close in Europe, the Ukraine, and another one in Israel, the cruelty of it. In Dajiang Dahai, Lung captures the suffering from the perspective of individuals, ordinary people, families, thus counteracting the propaganda of both sides. If we continue to be the unthinking cogs in a machine, she says, then how do you know whether these tragic misfortunes would not be repeated? Clairvoyant, farsighted, forgiving, multi-perspectivity, ambiguity tolerance that denies calls for revenge and instead pleads forgiveness. The openness to allow for new ways of seeing. And that's also part of the message that she confers in her new novel, 达武山下, which begins a call to all of us, 孩子们，这个世界不是只有一种看见. Mainlanders, Taiwanese, Ami, Taiwan, Germans, Swiss, whatever. Official Minister of Culture, Lung Ying-tai served in the government twice. This was, of course, after a number of sea changes had taken place in Taiwan politics since the mid-1980s, and thus after the publication of Ye Huoji. Opponents of the nationalists were no longer forbidden to hold meetings. You would have the Minzhu Jinbu Dang that was established in 1986. You would have President Yang Jingguo, who decides against dissolving that group and against persecuting its leaders, and in 1987 stops martial law and allows family visits to the mainland, as well as selecting Li Denghui to become a Taiwanese-born technocrat, to become president in a way. And this move allows and is followed by reforms giving more power to native-born citizens, calming anti-nationalist sentiments, keeping a vibrant culture of dissent, however, and debate alive at the same time. And you have all these different groups in Taiwan that continue to debate. After Jiang Jingguo dies in 1988, Li Denghui and his followers continue to democratize the government, to confer authority to Taiwanese-born citizens, for example, to Aborigines, to atone for white terror and other colonial mistakes. And Taiwan undergoes a really drastic process of Taiwanization, democratization, etc., etc., and becomes the country which is, for example, the most open in the world, perhaps, with regard to LGBTQ plus laws, for example. And this is the kind of atmosphere in which Lung Ying-tai enters and exits significantly as a politician. And she has a lot to do with many of the good things that I've been talking about. Not so silent loner, last few words. Since she resigned from the government position in December 2014, she's left Taipei, first for Hong Kong, and from there, resigning once more with pomp and circumstance and thus significance, she has lived on a farm in the south of Taiwan by the Pacific coast and has written that novel, among other books, that we will be talking about. Nature seems to be a new focus, but that nature writing is not only eco-critical. We'll hear more about this now. 大武山下, the book that is dedicated to the soil and the sweat of the Taiwan people. 献给滋养我的土地，献给在土地上弯腰流汗的人。The book reminds me a lot of Zhuangzi. We talked about this. 不是彭 The Frog in the Well. It's all there. A book that talks about love for the tiniest of things, the detail, as well as the great grand world and the universe, in the best sense of eco-criticism. The book begins, 回冷了之后，才知道曾经热过的是火。念断了之后，才知道之前的叫做爱。You'll hear more about it from Lung Ying-tai herself and from her German translator, Monika Li. A warm welcome to both of you. Thank you very much.
Such an insightful and compassionate introduction of myself could only come from Heidelberg. I see some of you are sitting on the floor, and actually, you hardly see me from that angle. Why don't you make yourself comfortable sitting here up front so that you could see me directly? So don't be shy, because I don't know when is the next time I come. And plus, I see an empty chair right here. Why are you not taking up the place here? Please, come forward. Don't sit on the side. I hardly see you. When you were still young, grab the chance to sit on the floor, because when you get older, you can't do that anymore. So, what about there? Do you want to move a little bit in the center? Oh, no, Barbara, no. No. Okay, that's better. Okay. Are there more chairs in the back? What about you? Do you intend to hide there? Yeah. Okay. I first have to get a feeling of the language for this evening. If you understand Mandarin, can you please raise your hand so that I know how far it goes? Okay, now let's put it out of the way. Those who do not understand Mandarin, would you be so kind to raise your hand so that I know? Okay, quite a few, so I cannot shift the language to Mandarin, fine. Any of you who do not understand German here, raise your hand, please. People who don't know German, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, something like 6 or 7 people. Anybody here who does not really understand English? No. All right. Okay. Well, okay. Then apparently it has to be English. Ja, fast 10 Jahre bin ich einmal die Woche von Frankfurt nach Heidelberg gefahren bin. Also jede Woche. Und deshalb betrachte ich Heidelberg eine meiner Heimatstädte. Und während dieser 10 Jahre habe ich 2 Kinder großgezogen. Und tatsächlich ist ein Teil des Romans, also ein Teil des Romans spiegelt eine Lebenslektion, die ich aus meiner Zeit in Deutschland gelernt habe. And that is what I'm going to share with you today. So, okay, there are 6 or 7 who do not know German, right? Almost 10 years, I used to drive from Frankfurt to Heidelberg every week. So I used to know the stretch of highway I would drive. It's about a 100 minutes drive. I would be in Heidelberg to teach once a week. And therefore, Heidelberg for me is one of my home cities. So to be back here, I'm on a tour this time, but Heidelberg is always, always a very special place in my heart, always. And actually, when some of you, I know some of you were with in my session in Frankfurt Buchmesse, and you will probably expect, I will be saying the same. Apparently, it's going to be different, right? I wouldn't have said this in Frankfurt. One part, indeed, when I was preparing for today, I didn't realize it before. It only occurred to me today. There's actually one part in this novel which has a lot to do with the time I spent in Germany. There was one particular lesson in life which I learned from my time in Germany. That is the following. So this narrator of the story, who is a mid-aged, early aging woman, but very unsuccessful writer, whose books don't sell at all. So that is not me. However, what I'm going to share with you is the real part, which has from life experience, which has inspired me for writing a novel like this. So, of course, a lot of it, most of it is fiction, but a lot of it is biographical, yes. And I'm going to share with you not the fictive part, because I'm not going to tell you who did the murder and who died and what happened to the murderer at the end. So I'm not going to spoil the story, and therefore I'm sharing with you is the real part, which kind of infiltrates into the novel as well. So this woman, who is the main narrator of the story, from the very beginning chapters, she is a kind of a lost soul. She has been moving around all her life throughout the world, constantly feeling lost. She doesn't know where her home is. She doesn't even know what she is searching for. So this is a restless soul, and actually a dark soul. In the depths of her heart, there is darkness in there. So this woman begins with this kind of mental state. And Monika, would you read part of it so that we get a feeling? So there are two here. All right.
Da sich mein Körper und meine Seele voneinander getrennt haben, ist mein Geist dem Leib schon weit vorausgeschritten. Und es scheint, als ob meine Seele immer in Richtung Dunkelheit läuft. Auch als ich noch jung war und vor jugendlicher Energie strotzend mit einem 20 Kilo schweren Rucksack auf dem Rücken den Gipfel eines 3000 Meter hohen Berges erreichte, dachte ich unmittelbar darüber nach, dass ich einmal, dement und von all meinen Kräften verlassen, sterben müsste. Ich kenne mein Symptom. In den Momenten, in denen mein Körper größte Freude erfährt, rutscht meine Seele bereits in Richtung trostloser, finsterer Vorstellungen ab. Ich befinde mich niemals im Jetzt, sondern immer in der Zukunft. Und diese Zukunft ist durchweg kalt und brach. Der Körper ist wie ein Reisender, der Gepäck schleppt. Kaum hat er eine wunderschöne Zwischenstation erreicht, weigert sich das Herz auszusteigen und streunt weiterhin umher. Sind die Schuhe voller Schlamm, die Haare voller Sand, neben mir nur Fremde, deren Sprache ich nicht verstehe, so sehne ich mich danach, in einem von Obst- und Gemüsegärten umgebenen Dorf zur Ruhe zu kommen und niemals wieder eine Reisetasche hochheben zu müssen. Habe ich aber ein Stück Land gekauft, Schwammkürbis, Rettich und Drillingsblumen angepflanzt, so grübele ich darüber nach, wohin ich demnächst aufbrechen sollte. Es scheint, als ob ich immerzu nach irgendetwas suche, aber was dieses Etwas genau sein könnte, dafür kann ich keine Worte finden. Wahrscheinlich existiert es nicht einmal. Man muss mir nur etwas in die Hand geben und genau in dem Moment, in dem ich diesen Gegenstand festhalte, schaut meine Seele bereits über den Gartenzaun hinweg in Richtung des gewundenen Wegs, der am grauen Horizont verschwindet. Kaum bin ich jedoch durch die Gartentür auf die Straße getreten, fragt mein Körper meine Seele, wohin willst du denn und warum? Ich habe in unzähligen kleinen Dörfern gewohnt. Als ich jung war, packte ich meine Reisetasche und verließ unser Dorf. seine alten Bäume und Reisfelder, Fischteiche und Weiher, Dorfbewohner und Tempel. Sie alle wurden von mir zurückgelassen. Winkend ging ich, ohne mich auch nur einmal umzudrehen, ohne einen Hauch von Nostalgie. Ein Winken folgte auf das andere, ein Abschied auf den nächsten. Ich bin ein Mensch, der sein Leben lang aufbrechen wird. Jedes Dorf ist stets nur eine Durchgangsstation.
Thank you, Monika. And what she has just read, I would like to read the same paragraphs in Mandarin so that you get a feeling of the original. And especially as a writer, I pay a lot of attention to the musicality of the written language. So I often, when I finish one sentence, it's like working like a poet. I would read it loud so that I could hear the tone of it. And therefore, I'm going to share with you how that paragraphs sound in Mandarin, okay? This woman who actually suffers from a symptom. And what's the name of the symptom? 身心脱臼。因为身心脱臼，所以心永远走在身的前面很远的地方，而且仿佛总是走向黑暗。青春焕发，背着20公斤背包登3000米高山的时候，我马上就想到我自己失智失能的时候该去哪里独自的死掉。我知道我的症状，在身体最快乐的那一刻，我的心已经滑向荒凉的黑暗的想象。我永远不在此刻，我永远在未来，而且未来永远是冷漠的、荒凉的。身体如果是一个提着行囊的旅人，到达一个美丽的驿站，我的心却拒绝下车，继续往前流浪。鞋子里都是土，头发里都是沙，身边都是听不懂语言的陌生人的时候，我却又渴望安定在一个被果园和菜圃包围的村子里，永生永世再也不提起行囊。可是当我买了一块地，种下了丝瓜、萝卜和9重葛之后，我很快就觉得是不是该走了？好像一直在找一个什么东西，可是那东西究竟是什么，又说不上来。那个东西可能根本不存在，因为你只要给我一个东西，我拿到手上握住的那一刻，我的心就看向篱笆外面那条蜿蜒消失在灰色天边的小路。一出了篱笆门上路了，我的身体就问我的心：你要去哪里？为什么？我住过无数的小村，年轻的时候提着行囊离开了村子，村子里的老树和稻田，鱼问和水塘，村人和庙宇都被我抛下，挥挥手，头也不回。我走了，没有一丝留恋。然后就是一次又一次的挥手，一次又一次的告别。我永远是那个正在离开的人。每一个村子都只是暂时的驿站。So that was a paragraph, and that's the mental state of this woman who started the journey through the novel. And so you're going to ask, well, what kind of a Lebenslektion you learned from your life in Germany? Well, I was actually kind of like this woman with this problem, that you never find your place in this borderless universe. And when I got children in Germany, I had to make a decision. What kind of children am I going to make them to be? And later on, I'm often asked the question by Chinese parents who settled in the US or settled in Germany. They ask me, how do you raise your children in Europe? and they ask, how do you teach them the Chinese tradition, which is so valuable, which is so important? Okay, how do you pass it on? And you know, my answer has been, since somehow the fate has decided that I landed in this country, and my children were going to grow up here, I said to myself that I do not want my children to become adults who later on were always saying goodbye to their villages and cities. I do not want my children to become modern nomads who, in the depths of their heart, they do not have a homeland, they do not have a home city, they do not have a hometown. I want my children, who are going to become cosmopolitan anyway later on, but I want to give them, in the depths of their heart, what is the German word for that? Bodenfest? Is that a German word? No? Boden, Ständigkeit. So rooted in where they are deeply, without any doubt, so that they do not become what I describe in the novel. They are always saying goodbye to wherever they happen to be, and they always look in the future, and they always ignore where they are at that moment, the nowness of life. And that's the way I raise my children. And why did I raise them that way? Because my own experiences, like the woman who appeared in the novel, who feels totally rootless. And so that's because when I arrived in Germany, the first time in 1978 to visit, and in 1988, I moved with a baby from Switzerland. So I spent 2 years in Zurich, and I moved to Germany in 1988, began to really raise 2 children. That was the decision I made, because I saw how the Germans live in their hometowns, in their home villages, how they were rooted in their cultural traditions, which made such a strong impression on me, that had a great impact on me. And so that's my beginning, was introducing this novel to you. It has a lot to do with my life in Germany as well. All right, so to give you an impression of the surroundings, the nature, the landscape, the town, and the people as background of this novel, I'm going to tell you not the fictive part, but the real life that had inspired me to write this fiction. So first of all, Voßstrasse Kavulungan. In Chinese, the name of the mountain is 大武山下, the 大武 bag. And naturally you might ask, well, why do you not entitle the novel as Voßstrasse 大武 bag or bag 大武? There's a reason to it. These mountains, for centuries, they still are the sacred mountains for 2 indigenous tribes in Taiwan. One is the Taiwan tribe, and the other one is the Lukai tribe, and they still live in the mountains there. These mountains were their sacred mountains, but they never called it 大武山. In fact, the name 大武 was given by the Japanese colonials when they were ruling over Taiwan from 1895 to 1945, and later on the Chinese just adopted the Japanese name. So to pay respect to the people who really live in the mountains was something that's sacred to them. Together with Monika, we decided to return the name to them, so it's called Kavulungan. I How many of you have been to Taiwan? Raise your hand to me. About less than 1/3. Okay, 1/4 about. All right. After you have read the novel, I'm sure you want to go. I'm very sure about that. So, here's the island. When I asked ChatGPT, in terms of land size, Taiwan is similar to which Bundesland of Germany? I got the answer, you know what? Hessen. But then, from Würzburg to Tübingen, and probably today in Heidelberg as well, people were telling me, no, it can't be. It's the same size as Baden-Württemberg. And so I think maybe the ChatGPT is wrong. But then imagine the size of this Baden-Württemberg. There are crowded mountain peaks which are over 3,000 meters high. That's very, very high. Taiwan has more than 200 peaks which are over 3,000 meters high. And therefore, the island is actually blanketed with very, very high mountains. And the Kavulungan mountain ranges are the very southern tip, this part. Okay, we know Taipei is somewhere here, and the Kavulungan is somewhere, this big range here, all right? And so this part. And I found the shape is so similar to the tail of this animal, and I tested my audiences, do you know what animal that is? Actually, a lot of people guessed it right. So I wonder about Heidelberg. What kind of animal is that, has such a tail? Huh? Can you say it louder? I can't understand. Wie heißt das nochmal? Nutter-Tier? Yeah, Amarillo and 穿山甲. Yes, 穿山甲, 穿山甲. However, what is in English? In German as well, 穿山甲. Huh? Anybody? Pangolin. Is that German too? Pangolin? No. So what is in German? Oh, yeah. Anyways, the tail of pangolin is very similar to the shape of the mountain range. And actually, the Ich-Erzählerin with this ghost, together they made this long journey through the mountain, the depths of the mountains, in order to write about that journey through the ancient paths in the mountains. I did the trekking myself. And throughout these 16 kilometers of mountain paths, almost under every tree, there was a hole. But when you see the hole in this kind of mountain, when you see the hole, and it's pitch dark, of course, you don't see what's inside, would you put your hand in the hole? I would not. But I was told by biologists there that in every hole there is a pangolin inside. So there are many very precious pangolins in there. Okay, so that's about the Kavulungan. And then the town. There's the town as the background of the novel. In fact, even just today, I received a personal message in the Facebook from somebody who lives in that town called Chaozhou Zhen. And he was writing extra to thank me, saying that, oh, you are bringing our town to Europe. That's wonderful. No, I'm very proud of it. This town is really at the foot of the mountain, Kavulungan. It's a town of 50,000 inhabitants. And if you ask me, Ying-tai, can you name a most typical, standard, stereotyping ordinary town of Taiwan. I would say, yes, that's it, Chaozhou-zhen, with 50,000 inhabitants. A majority of them are Hokkien-ese, they speak Hokkien-ese, Fujian, Minanyu. And a smaller percentage of them speak Hakka. And then about 7 to 8% of the population are the indigenous people. And most of the townspeople are farmers, fishermen, small merchants, or laborers who work probably on construction sites. So it's a town that nobody ever really goes. There's no tourism there, and there's no attraction there. And people were not particularly proud of this town because people don't know much about you. So that's a very typical town. So I drew a map, a city map. Unfortunately, well, it's not included in the German version. So I would encourage you, when you go to Taiwan, you should buy the Chinese version. And you can take out the folded map. There you go. And then go to this town and try your luck. Many Taiwanese readers did make this literary journey to the town, including some mainland Chinese as well. Somehow they got this book online, and one of them, at least I knew one of them, who flew to the city of Kaohsiung, the big city with an airport, and then he took a taxi to this town. And then after he ended up in this town, he didn't know how to find me. He wanted to meet me. And so he went to the local police station and asked the policeman, I want to meet Lung Ying-tai. Do you know where she lives? If you do that with a German policeman, what would he do? Whatever. At that time, fortunately, I was in Taipei. So how do I learn about this journey of this man from Jiangsu? Because I got a call when I was in my office in Taipei, and the call comes from a middle school principal, Lin Xiaozhang, Long Lao Shi. So what for? She said, in my office, there's a man sitting across from me. He comes from Jiangsu. He just flew in. He wanted to see you, but he doesn't know where you live. So he went to the police station, and the policeman said, oh yes, I know, I'll take you there. That's why when I moved later to another village on the Pacific, that's where I am now. I first went to the police station and told them, please don't tell anybody where I live. And the post office as well, and the 7-Eleven clerks. Because the tourists would ask. But this guy from Jiangsu, I got this call from the principal, and she said, this man is sitting there, and what should I do with him? And in fact, he has been all around town and has gone through all the places that I would go. For example, the noodle stand I would visit, and he was there already. And there was a little cafe I used to go, and he was brought there as well. Because people were so ultra-friendly, they would really hop up on my motorcycle, and I'll take you to the cafe where I've seen her before. So that was the journey. So back to what I'm saying. If you go to Taiwan, get a copy of this book, and many Taiwanese readers do go there with this map. However, I have to tell, this map is not real. I made it up. It's fictive. Okay, it's a novel anyway. So if you really follow the roads, it's real and it's not. So you may be surprised. So this is the town, and what else can I share with you? So this is the way the town looks. It's a bit bright. And so this town is literally at the foot of the mountains. Okay, the people. What kind of people live there? So obviously you have the fishermen. If you want to see the boats coming in, loaded with huge mullins, all kinds of fish, you have to be at the port, the fishing harbor, the fish harbor at about 4 o'clock in the morning. Then you see the boats coming in and the fish unloaded, and you would witness the auctions as well on site. Then you had farmers. This is one family on one motorbike. And that's me. I was working together with a farmer. And so he said, Ying-tai, actually, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in my orchard at 5 in the morning. Do you want to join me? I said, no, 5 o'clock is too early. But anyway, I joined him and picking the fruit. Do you recognize what fruit that is? Lianwu, and what is that in English? Again. It's a wax apple. I don't know why they are called that way, but it's 辣苹果, wax apple. What would that be in German? Bitte? Yeah? I have no idea. Okay, so I was together with farmers and fishermen. And then the people who live there, small merchants like this woman and these 2 young women, you know what she's selling? What's in that big bucket? Fantuan, yes, rice balls. It's hot. Oh, I missed that. I really think the Germans can sell that too. Probably will make business. Anyway, so these are the predominant people living there, and the small farmers. They would bring she, for example, she would bring whatever she grows personally, and she bring it to the farmers market. And a man like this, I used to go to his noodle stand. Actually, Monika, we should read that part. Do you know where that is? Who is there? Yes, please.
Im Licht des frühen Morgens erreichte ich einen kleinen Platz vor einem buddhistischen Tempel. Der verführerische Duft dampfenden Essens stieg von einigen Ständen auf, an denen Frühstück angeboten wurde. Ich setzte mich an einen Tisch und bestellte eine Schüssel Hundun. Ein dunkelhäutiger alter Bauer saß mir gegenüber. Seit ich an meinem Platz saß, hatte er kein einziges Mal aufgeblickt. Er schenkte sich aus der dickbäuchigen Kanne Tee ein, seine Augenlider hingen tief herab. Ich hatte ein paar der Bemerkungen aufgeschnappt, die er im lokalen Dialekt dem Standbetreiber auf der anderen Straßenseite zugerufen hatte. Für dieses Jahr sei kein Taifun zu erwarten, im nächsten Jahr würden Ananas und Bananen im Überschuss wachsen, sodass die Preise fallen würden und den Kohl werde man für 10 Kwai verscherbeln müssen. Taiwan wird es bald nicht mehr geben, murmelt er wie zu sich selbst. Da er aber plötzlich ins Hochchinesische gewechselt hatte, wollte er ganz offensichtlich, dass ich, diese Frau, die so eindeutig von weit her kam, verstand, was er sagte. Mühsam wandte ich mich von den heiß dampfenden Hundun ab. Taiwan wird es bald nicht mehr geben. Er hatte den Satz wiederholt, weiterhin ohne mich eines Blickes zu würdigen. Er trank einen Schluck Tee, starrte auf die Teekanne und sagte, die internationalen Fluggesellschaften benutzen den Namen Taiwan schon nicht mehr. Oh, ich wechselte zum lokalen Dialekt. Wie sollte es denn idealerweise sein? Der alte Bauer schüttelte den Kopf. Da kann man nichts machen. In der Geschichte der 3 Reiche steht, dass die mit der größten Faust gewinnen werden. In diesem Augenblick schaltete sich der Standbesitzer, der soeben Mitaimu-Reisnudeln zubereitete, in unser Gespräch ein. Wer glaubt, dass uns die Amerikaner helfen werden, soll sich schön weiter Illusion machen. Als ob die Atoas tatsächlich dazu bereit wären, ihre Söhne als Soldaten herüberzuschicken. Träumt weiter. Der alte Bauer stimmte ihm zu. Richtig, wenn es hart auf hart kommt, werden sie sich an keine ihrer Versprechen mehr erinnern. Allerdings haben wir hier ein kleines Paradies, merkte der Koch an, während er die Nudeln aus einer großen Pfanne fischte. Die da drüben sind weder dumm noch böse. Sie wissen auch, dass es für sie keinen Vorteil hat, ein Paradies zu verwüsten. Sie werden keinen Krieg führen. So dachte man also auf dem Land. Ich betrachtete den Standbesitzer eingehend. Er war dünn, sein ärmelloses Shirt klebte ihm am Körper, im Topf spiegelte sich sein erhitztes, gerötetes Gesicht. Sein Haar hatte einen leichten Rotstich, um die Stirn hatte er sich ein weißes Tuch gebunden, das verhinderte, dass Schweiß in das Essen tropfte. Dennoch wischte er sich ununterbrochen mit einem Handtuch, das um seinen Hals lag, über das Gesicht.
Okay. And this is actually taken from real life. I was at the stand, and this man, and they were really having a conversation, commenting on current affairs in that manner. I was very impressed, you know. And then in the novel, this guy, this Ich-Erzählerin, later on, apparently he was in love with a very tough woman, a dragon lady type of woman, a hair salon owner, and this Ich-Erzählerin was having her hair washed, and then all of a sudden she saw this man from this noodle stand, so this hair salon dresser was washing the hair, and then this man was standing there admiring, looking at this woman he was in love with. But all of a sudden, the Ich-Erzählerin, the narrator, saw that this man standing there changed color. His face went pale because he stared at the woman he was just minutes ago looking at admiringly with love in his eyes. His color changed. He stuttered and he said, "Is someone standing there?" And the hairdresser turned around, saw nothing. Nobody was standing there. And this narrator also looked at that direction. Actually, nobody was there. So that is the first appearance of the ghost in the story. So this is also a ghost story. This is a philosophical journey. And it's also a creamy, of course. It's also a crime story. So I'm not going to tell you how it went on. However, and there's also the indigenous population there. And this old lady, I took the photo. She was 97 years old and still walking and working in her rice field. And then this is typical of the indigenous men who will be bearing their shoulders and doing a lot of things on the road. But in this story, this narrator, this woman, one day at dusk, because in the mountains it gets dark very quickly, and she was driving through a mountain pass, and then she saw two indigenous young men sitting at a cliff, a dangerous cliff, and the moon was shining. And so this narrator stopped her car out of curiosity, and she asked these two young men, "What are you doing in the middle of the mountains, a deserted mountain, sitting on a cliff, talking to each other?" And these two, one of the young men told her, "Well, we're just having a good time. You know, they feel so comfortable with mountains, with this huge wasteland." And so the narrator asked them, "Well, what do you do? What is your job?" And the both of them answered, "We are hunters." And so the story went further. So the narrator got curious, "What do you hunt?" The answer is they hunt a wild boar, 野猪. And what do you do with the wild boar once you have them? And they said, "Well, we have customers, we will call them and they will come to fetch the meat. And this woman narrator said, okay, here's my number. Next time when you had hunted somebody, would you give me a call? And that's in the novel, it went on. And this woman really went, then experienced this meeting in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of the night. And she was really very frightened, but the young man appeared, and she was led into a mountain tribe, met the people, the family of these two young hunters, and she witnessed the whole process, because when she thought she would arrive there and then just give them the money and then she would get a bag of pork and go home. But then it turned out, no, because that wild boar, that bleeding boar, was still lying on the floor, on the ground, and water was boiling. It was a big bunch of wood. And so Monika is going to read for us a little tiny episode of that, just to give you a feeling of what the town's life is like.
Xunuk ging neben mir in die Knie und fragte leise, du willst das nicht mit ansehen, oder? Tatsächlich fiel es mir schwer, genau hinzusehen. Zwar filmte ich das Ganze mit meinem weit von mir gestreckten Smartphone, doch den Kopf hatte ich abgewandt. Xunuk führte mich zu einem Stuhl, der etwas abseits stand. Ich befürchte, dass du bis spät nachts hier bleiben musst. Ich werde ein Lied für dich singen, in Ordnung? Ich war einverstanden. Fröhlich erklärte er, dann hole ich meine Gitarre. Schnell war er wieder zurück und setzte sich neben mich. Dann verkündete er, ich werde dir ein Liebeslied vorsingen. Etwas schüchtern, aber mit einer wunderschönen, unverfälschten Stimme begann er sanft zu singen. Die Flammen zischten, das Wasser dampfte. Ein Kind mit nacktem Popo fuhr auf einem Dreirad mit plattem Reifen im Kreis herum, verfolgt von seiner vollbusigen Mutter, die ihm mit einer Schüssel nachlief und ihm immer wieder einen Löffel Reis in den Mund schob. Das Bergschweinferkel, das tags zuvor noch durch die endlosen Wälder des Kavulungan gestreift war, hatte sich inzwischen in einen Berg weißer Fleischstücke verwandelt. Plötzlich ertönte Chorgesang. Der Gottesdienst in der kleinen Kirche hatte begonnen. »Wovon handelt das Lied, das du gesungen hast?« fragte ich Xunuk. Er strich mit dem Finger über die Saiten, warf mir einen verschämten Blick zu und wiederholte die Verse flüsternd. Meine Liebe gebe ich dir, Flügel, die dich fliegen lassen, und Ohren, die Träume hören, Augen, die Regenbögen sehen. Diese einzigartige, weite Welt, sie beginnt am Kavulungan. Nun warf er seine Zurückhaltung über Bord und sang aus voller Kehle. Das Flackern des Feuers ließ sein junges Gesicht aufleuchten.
Okay, so you get an impression of an indigenous village in the middle of the mountain. And then the European missionaries began to arrive in the island about 250 years ago. And as a result, the indigenous population of Taiwan, which comprises of about 600,000 people in population, most of them are Christians. So in the little tiny village where I live, with 900 households of the Amis people, in this tiny, tiny village, there are 5 churches of different denominations. So, and you see the people going to church services, and there's one of them sitting inside the church. All right, so central to the book, now you remember at the very beginning this sophisticated cosmopolitan woman who actually does not find a home on this planet. And so she actually went to a Buddhist master, kind of seeking advice. And this master told her, go back to the village which you left 50 years ago and see what you find. So you have a journey there. And so the theme of journey takes several different layers of meaning here. So this woman obviously is on a journey, and then she encountered a very strange 14-year-old girl who looks so innocent as a 14-year-old girl. However, when she opens her mouth and talks, this narrator gets very confused because this 14-year-old sounds like somebody who is 140 years old, a very, very old soul. But later on, they become a strange kind of companion. An older woman with a teenage girl who took upon a journey through the mountain pass, which I told you about that I did the trekking myself in order to write about this journey. So the journey, this is the photo of part of it, and I did the trekking myself, and in very, very high mountains. So that's the mountain, and the pass looks like this. All right, and to give you an impression of the journey, which the narrator and the 14-year-old girl ghost took together, and I did the investigative journey myself. Monika is to read a little paragraph about the journey experiences to give you an impression. I would encourage you, if you go to China, if you love nature and you love mountains, take the trip, make the trip yourself and try it.
Wieder bückte ich mich, um meine Gamaschen über den Wanderschuhen festzubinden. Die 2 Paar Socken, die ich übereinander trug, schienen mir keinen ausreichenden Schutz vor den Blutegeln zu bieten. Sie beobachtete mich dabei, wie ich unbeholfen mit dem Salz hantierte und erklärte in belehrendem Ton: Ein Blutegel, der sich auf deinem Arm hin und her windet, sucht gerade noch nach einer geeigneten Stelle, an der er zum Saugen ansetzen kann. In diesem Moment kannst du ihn einfach wegschnipsen. Wenn er sich aber bereits vollgesogen hat, darfst du ihn nicht abreißen, da sonst der Kiefer in der Wunde stecken bleiben kann. Ich könnte ihn aber auch mit Salz bestreuen. Die Salzdose in meiner Hand gab mir ein Gefühl von Sicherheit. Oh, Salz, bemerkte sie. Ja, wenn du den Egel mit Salz bestreust, wird er loslassen, von dir abfallen und sterben. Allerdings ist das keine besonders gute Methode, denn der Schock veranlasst ihn, sich sozusagen in die Wunden zu übergeben. Damit ist eine schlimme Infektion vorprogrammiert. Je mehr Details ich von ihr erfuhr, desto ekelerregender fand ich die ganze Sache. Meine Kopfhaut kribbelte. Wenn du dagegen bist, Lebewesen zu töten, dann lass ihn sich doch einfach an deinem Blut satt trinken. Betrachte das Ganze doch einmal aus der Perspektive dieses bedauernswerten, hungrigen Kerlchens. So eine kleine Blutspende macht dir doch nichts aus. Dem Blutegel dagegen wird sie glücklich machen. Das ist doch ideal, oder? Und worin besteht der Unterschied zu einer üblichen Blutspende?
Okay, so I would encourage you to make the trip. And again, to give you a feeling of how it sounds in Mandarin, in the original language, the same paragraphs. 所以这2个人，等于是一个是人，一个是鬼不同的年龄，他们就走这个很难走的、有点阴森的山路，继续往前走。净水营古道，这是古道。他常来，这个他是那个14岁的鬼。年雨量5200公里，是这个岛屿的疯狂降雨区，日日夜夜下个不停，也是蚂蟥的大部落。蚂蟥在中国大陆也是叫蚂蟥吗？是。我根本不想说话，变得很神经质，脖子有点痒，怀疑是蚂蟥贴身，全身发麻，惊恐的用手一抹，却又什么都没有。走路的时候，常常突然被蜘蛛网蒙得整个脸，惊得我一再的歇斯底里。我再度弯腰，把绑腿密密扎紧在登山鞋的外层，登山鞋里面已经是2层的厚袜子，然后扭过身去，把一盒盐巴掏了出来。他停了下来，老气横秋的看着我，看我笨拙的掏出盐巴。他像个指导员一样说：“如果蚂蟥在你的手臂上扭来扭去，表示他正在找地方准备吸血。口吸盘还没有刺进你的肉， 那你用手指轻轻把它弹走了就好。如果他的身体已经开始变胖，表示他正在吸血，你不要去拔它，因为你越拔，它就钻得越深。那这个我就说撒盐，我就把盐巴拿在手上，给心里一点安全感。他说盐哦，盐撒在蚂蟥身上，蚂蟥就会松口掉下来，它的身体就会卷缩起来，立刻死掉。可是我跟你讲啊，撒盐不是最好的办法，因为它一感觉到盐受到刺激，会把它身体里面所有的东西全部喷进你的血管里。搞不好有什么奇怪的细菌。他说的越仔细，我越觉得恶心，头皮发麻。然后他就继续说，如果你主张不杀生呢，那你干脆高高兴兴的就让他在你身上吸个饱。你想想看，他挺可怜，饿了那么久，你捐出一点点血，你不会怎么样，他却得到幸福，不是很好吗？其实这跟你平常去捐个血意思完全一样。So, okay, take the trip, go through it. Okay, we go on. This is the town again, and then when I, the author, when I moved to the town, I lived in the town for 3 years. At the beginning, I would ask people, do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe in the gods that you pray to? Do you believe in, there are 100,000 kind of gods? Do you believe in them? But very soon, I discover it is a meaningless question. Because for the people there in the town, it's not a matter of believing or not. It is life itself. It is not something that you choose to believe or you contemplate and you try to decide if you want to believe it or not. It is a matter of fact. It is life. So I stopped asking questions very soon. Every village there is surrounded on 4 sides, north, south, east, west, by small temples like this. And you might say, well, it's a 土地公庙. No, it's not. Because you see the name of it is called, for instance, Xi Ying. Xi Ying, the west. How do you translate Ying? It means what? Army, battalion, barracks. So every village, or if it's on the east side, then you will see Dong Ying. If on the north, it will be Bei Ying, and the south, it will be Nan Ying. It is because the people would have these temples, they believe that the village is guarded by the 4 armies stationed around the village from north and south, east and west. And this is their army barrack. And then, of course, there's the 5th one, which is stationed right at the center of the village. So there are rituals from the time you wake up to the hour where you go to bed. You live these rituals without thinking about them. So faith is an integral part of life there. Well, who's coming? Then the author, that's me. In the market, the morning market, there's a stand. I like to go. And there's this middle-aged woman who would make 大肠面线. 大肠面线, I don't know what it's in English, 大肠面线. Yeah, but anyway, and she looks very tired. And she liked me, and every time I was there, she would give me an extra big portion. And then one day, she said, Ying-tai, I think you should come to me tonight, this evening. And at first, I was puzzled by that, because she is a noodle seller in the morning market. But then it turned out that she, during the day, is a noodle seller. In the evening, she is the high priest of a temple of her own. And people would go to her to ask, to seek advice about all sorts of problems in their life. So she's somebody who can communicate between the human world and the unseen parallel world. And she asked me to go to her because she said, you don't look well. That's pretty scary. And I laughed it off. Of course, I don't know what you would do. Would you go to her? Yes. And because I was writing this story, the novel, so one day I decided I wanted to pay her a visit, and I did go. When I arrived there, the ritual was already going on inside in the living room, and there's a glass door. There are glass doors, the panels there, and it's like going to a clinic where the people waiting on their stools, waiting in line to seek advice from her. So I went right in, and I tried to behave like a pious person, because if you go into a Catholic church, you have to be very careful, right? So I would be gingerly asking her, can I touch this, can I touch that? And I thought everything would be forbidden. Then I discovered everything is fine. You can do anything you like to in that room. And then finally, the ritual started, and she began the performance. And actually, she was not she anymore once the ritual began, because the god that she kept in this temple is called 祖师爷. The 祖师爷 would enter her body, and so when she speaks to you, her voice has changed, her body language has changed, and she stopped talking in the everyday vocabulary. She began to speak in 文言文, in ancient literary style of language, and therefore, so the advice seeker will be sitting down there at a lower chair, and this 祖师爷, this god, through her body, would doing with incense or whatever, perform the rituals and telling the person what to do with her or his problem. And I was allowed to sit there and listen to everything. But because the god, through her, spoke a 文言文, a literary language, and therefore that needed to be translated. So there was a translator standing right next, translating what the god through her says to the person who is the seeker. And so Monika is going to read part of it.
Mitten im Raum stand ein niedriger Stuhl. Er war zur Straße hin ausgerichtet, seine Lehne zeigte zum Altar. Nun kam Bewegung in die Dorfbewohner, die bisher in einem Kreis um Spindel herumgestanden hatten. Als erstes rührte sich ein altes Ehepaar, die ihre Kleidung als Bauern auszeichnete. Die Frau setzte sich mit sorgenvoller Miene auf den Stuhl und Spindel, oder besser gesagt, ihr vom Geist des Gründungsvaters besessener Körper, stellte sich hinter sie, sodass sie hinaus auf die Straße und die unter den Arkaden wartenden Gläubigen blicken konnte. Der alte Bauer, der etwas verloren neben seiner Frau stand, sah ebenfalls sehr besorgt aus. Die tiefe Stimme des Gründungsvaters ertönte aus Spindels Mund. Was möchtest du erfahren?, fragte er im lokalen Dialekt. Die alte Frau ließ den Kopf hängen. Ich sah, wie ihr eine Träne über die Wange lief. Unsere jüngste Tochter hat sich schon vor langer Zeit auf den Weg gemacht, um nach Arbeit zu suchen. Bis heute ist sie nicht zurückgekehrt. Ich habe wirklich große Angst um sie und kann nicht schlafen, schluchzte die Frau. Der Gründungsvater antwortete in beschwichtigendem Ton. Du musst keine Angst haben, ich werde sie beschützen. Sie wird wohlbehalten zu euch zurückkehren. Die alte Frau schloss die Augen. Spindel legte ihre linke Hand auf den Kopf der Frau. Mit den Räucherstäbchen in der rechten fuhr sie ihre Silhouette nach, sodass die alte Bäuerin bald von einer Rauchwolke eingehüllt dasaß. Eines der Gemeindemitglieder bot ihr ein Glas Wasser an, das sie in einem Zug leer trank.
And on my own field trip, I went there because I heard one after another, I heard the most intimate, personal, private tragedies from everybody's life. Not only I could hear every word, but the people who were waiting outside actually could see and hear as well. So at the end of the session, when the god has left her body and people were relaxed and having some snacks to eat, I asked this translator brother, I said, tell me, how could these people tell such intimate, private things in front of the public? And this translator said to me, actually the narrator, he said, hey, don't you understand that those who experience pain are family? Pain makes you family. And so I said, but what about privacy? What about privacy? People would leave this temple, they would talk about you in town. And then this translator said, you urban people simply do not understand one thing. That is suffering itself. So the experience and the knowledge of and the recognition of suffering makes strangers brothers and sisters. And this is what you urban people fail to understand, fail to see. And because of your failure, you call it privacy. So that was about the faith. So we want to go to the final chapter, that is about the crime. It was a cold case from 45 years ago. And I wanted to write about the crime. This cold case, a 14-year-old girl from the town was murdered. And at that time in Taiwan, nobody has ever heard of murder, and therefore it became a case that anybody over the age of 50 still remembers even today. And I went through all the newspaper clippings, reports, and I went through all the court documents as well. This one man was sentenced, first to imprisonment for life, and then later on he sat 13 years in jail. And when I was writing this novel, he was in his mid-80s, an old man. And I discovered that he was still alive. So I tracked him down through many ways. I found him. I went to his shanty, Tiepiu, a shanty house at the river, and then found it empty. And then I found out he was in jail again for drunk driving. But of course, he could not afford a car. His drunk driving was being drunk, riding a motorcycle in the mountain pass, because he would drink with his indigenous brothers, and then he would leave the home of the drinking buddies and ride his motorcycle along the dark, winding mountain road. But the local policemen, they need credits. And so they would wait at the entrance of the road and catch them. And he was fined maybe 5, 6, and 7 times, so he ended up in jail for a year. And I found a way, getting into the jail, I met him. And this is the background of the story, and I'm not going to tell you about the murder. However, back to this 14-year-old girl in the novel. Of course, it's not real. It's a novel. It's fiction. This 14-year-old girl from the town apparently comes from a better family. And so-called better family, her mother is a biology teacher. And therefore, if you're a nature lover, an avid and alert reader has counted how many plants are mentioned in the novel. Something like 165 different plants, many of them indigenous to Taiwan, and something like 150 kind of animals are mentioned in the book. And so the mother of the girl was a biology teacher, and her father was a mathematician who was trying to solve one of the 10 top world's mathematical problems. And therefore, her father is a man who never raises the head and talked to anybody. He hardly spoke at all. He was always trying to work out his mathematical problems. And so the girl had a frustration. She didn't know how to break the ice with her father. And the mother loved trees crazy, and so the girl is a nature lover as well. And the day the girl, the fateful day, Monika is going to read her last day in life.
Auf dem Bahnsteig erschien in leuchtenden Schriftzeichen die Anzeige, die die Ankunft unseres Zuges ankündigte. Das Mädchen blickte die Schienen entlang, die sich bis zum Horizont erstreckten. Leise sagte sie: Das Manuskript, bei dem meine Mutter meinem Vater am vorherigen Abend behilflich gewesen war, waren die Antworten auf meine Frage gewesen, die mein Vater für mich aufgeschrieben hatte. Er hatte mir die Aufzeichnungen am nächsten Tag geben wollen. Aber woher hätte ich das wissen sollen? Dieser Morgen, an dem ich so wütend weggelaufen bin, ohne mich zu verabschieden, war das letzte Mal, dass ich meine Mutter gesehen habe. Am Morgen, an dem sie sich in der Schule eingeschrieben hatte, war das Mädchen wutentbrannt aus dem Haus gestürmt. Da an jedem Tag kein Unterricht stattfand, musste man nicht in Uniform erscheinen. Und da das Mädchen vorhatte, nach der Registrierung mit Ajong zum Qingshan-Park zu radeln, hatte es seine Mutter tags zuvor gebeten, seinen grasgrünen Faltenrock zu waschen. Den wollte das Mädchen bei ihrem Ausflug anziehen, denn es war aus einem luftigen Nylonstoff gefertigt, der beim Gehen im Wind flatterte und einem das Gefühl von Freiheit und Coolness gab. Schon als das Mädchen am Morgen aufgestanden war, hatte sie festgestellt, dass der grasgrüne Faltenrock noch im Wäschekorb lag. Ihre Mutter entschuldigte sich und erklärte, sie habe ihrem Vater am Abend noch bei der letzten Reinschrift eines Manuskripts geholfen. Es war spät geworden und sie habe vergessen, den grünen Rock zu waschen. Missmutig zog das Mädchen die weiße Bluse und den schwarzen Rock an, schlüpfte in ihre Schuhe und aß mürrisch die Hundtouren, die ihre Mutter zubereitet hatte. Ihre Mutter war ratlos. Was soll das, Liu Xinhai? Ich habe mich bei dir entschuldigt, aber du bist immer noch wütend auf mich. Sie wollte ein wenig frisch geschnittenen Koriander über die Hunde ihrer Tochter streuen, doch diese zog ihre Schüssel beiseite, sodass der Koriander auf dem Tisch landete. »Wieso bist du wegen des grünen Rocks so wütend?« fragte Liang Suqin verblüfft. Doch anstelle einer Antwort knallte das Mädchen die leer gegessene Schüssel und ihre Stäbchen auf den Tisch, riss die mit Bärchen bedruckte Plastiktüte an sich und rannte ohne Abschiedsworte aus dem Haus. Als sie vor dem Hauseingang auf ihr Rad stieg, rief ihr die Mutter zu: »Komm gleich nach Hause, sobald du dich registriert hast. Wir warten mit dem Mittagessen auf dich. Es gibt die Glasnudeln, die du so magst. Und Papa hat eine Überraschung für dich.« Doch das Mädchen tat, als habe es Suqins Worte nicht gehört. Von übergebeugt trat sie kräftig in die Pedale und sauste, ohne sich auch nur einmal umzudrehen, davon. Sie wollte so schnell wie möglich aus dem Blickfeld der Mutter verschwinden.
I'm going to end our talk tonight with this last paragraph we're going to read today. And I'm going to read the last paragraph, and both in German, my very bad German, and in Mandarin. And the reading of this part, I read for our old friend, Rudolf Wagner. So this girl, this is the end of the journey of this older woman, the narrator, with the 14-year-old girl, the ghost. At the end of their journey was the first time that this narrator learned about what happened to her life. And so this is the last part. The girl finally told the narrator what happened that day. And so they were waiting at a train station for the coming train to take them to finish their journey together. So they were waiting for the train. After the girl has explained what happened during that day. So auf dem Bahnsteig erschien in leuchtenden Schriftzeichen die Anzeige, die die Ankunft unseres Zuges ankündigte. Das Mädchen blickte die Schienen entlang, die sich bis zum Horizont erstreckten. Leise sagte sie: Das Manuskript, bei dem meine Mutter, mein Vater am vorigen Abend behilflich gewesen war, waren die Antworten auf meine Fragen gewesen, die mein Vater für mich aufgeschrieben hatte. Er hatte mir die Aufzeichnungen am nächsten Tag geben wollen, aber woher hätte ich das wissen sollen? Dieser Morgen, an dem ich so wütend weggelaufen bin, ohne mich zu verabschieden, war das letzte Mal, dass ich meine Mutter gesehen habe. Traurig betrachtete ich ihr kleines Gesicht. Sagte ich: Eure Liebe ist tief das Schicksal, aber so flüchtig, murmelte ich. Sie wandte sich zu mir um und streichelte meine Hand. Ihre Sanftheit beruhigte mich. Es war, als tröste eine Mutter ihre Tochter. Leise sagte sie: Wenn du eines Tages in die letzte endgültige Dunkelheit eintrittst und aus dieser an den Ort des Lichts zurückschaust, wirst du feststellen, dass unser aller Schicksal flüchtig, unsere Liebe tief ist. Rumpelnd fuhr der Zug ein. And I'm going to read this in Chinese as well, as a remembrance for our old friend. And I hope if there's a parallel space, he would hear us tonight. So, the same paragraph in Mandarin. For those who do not understand German, 是这个小女孩14岁的女孩，跟她母亲、父亲 离别的最后一天，就是他非常生气，他妈没有把他当天要穿的绿色的裙子洗好，他妈忘了，那是因为前一天晚上他妈一直在帮他爸爸整理东西，而事实上他爸爸是在为这个女儿写一份完整的答案，就是那个女儿希望他父亲跟他说明了，他父亲从来没有时间，所以他非常生气的就踩着脚踏车，母亲说什么他也不回应就走了，然后他再也没有回来。月台边火车进站的警告灯已经亮起，小鬼望着延伸到天边的绵绵长长的铁轨，轻轻地说：“我妈帮我爸誊稿，就是爸爸那本为我写的书，准备第二天给我。我怎么会知道呢？但是那个早晨，那样的不回头，就是我跟妈妈永生永世的告别了。”我难过的看着他小小的脸说：“你们爱那么深，缘那么浅。”不是的，他转过身来，伸出一只手抚摸我的手，带着无限的温柔，好像妈妈在安慰女儿，说：“不是的，当你进入最后的绝对的永远的黑暗，从黑暗往回看那有光的地方，你就会知道，其实我们所有的人都是缘那么浅，爱那么深。”火车轰轰的进站了。So, this is for Rudolph. Thank you very much. In any language, okay? Well, any of the three.
Thank you very much for coming to Heidelberg. Thank you very much for staying longer here, because I was also at your lesson in Buchmesse the other day.
Different.
Yeah, it's quite different, yeah. But for this time, I prepared a lot of questions, but, well, I'm just going to ask you one question. I've read also your other books, Dear Andres, also Big River, Big Sea, 1949. And, well, my question would be, how would you describe the relationship between Voßstrasse, Kavulungan, and also other books? And are there any thematic connections, or what do you think, like, if there's any connections, like, between all your works together? Is there a transition?
Well, what a good question. You are actually asking, is there a red line through all my works of my life? I don't know, it's not good for the author to answer this question. Maybe it's better for literary critics. But if I have to answer you, I could only think of one word, which probably threads even my political essays, commentaries, my literary criticism, and my novel or short stories. I would say it's compassion. Because I remember when I was younger, and it was fashionable when I was a teenager. You know, the Taiwanese teenager in the 60s, we were reading Kafka and we were reading Bertrand Russell, I guess without understanding much. But I remember what impressed me, even then when I was 16. Bertrand Russell was trying to answer a question thrown at him, saying, what is the one thing that drives you throughout your life? And he said compassion. And that rings a bell right away. And if I have to answer your question, I would say be in 大江大海, or in this book, it's compassion. And if you have to translate compassion into Chinese, I could not think of anything other than maybe it's 慈悲心. Yeah. Thank you.
There's another question there. Yes.
I want to ask whether you feel rooted now, because you mentioned in the beginning that how your time in Germany inspired this novel, and you described this woman as kind of like feeling rootless. And I know you have spent your life, around the world. And I just wonder whether you do, and if you do, when. Thank you.
Have I found the place where I don't feel I'm floating anymore? I don't really know. I tell you what. At the moment, I'm living in the Burmese village, in the mountains overlooking the Pacific Ocean. The existential question of why are you here? Where are you going? This kind of horrible questions don't rise very much for one particular reason. I am taking care of my 99-year-old mother. So as long as she is there under my care, I don't need to ask this question. I want to walk her through the last mile of her life. But that existential question would rise again when she has completed her journey. I think that question would rise again. So I don't know. And the answer will come when that happens. Maybe I'll come to Heidelberg. Okay, next.
Thank you. I have a follow-up question about the routing, because my father is a huge fan of you, and he gave me an assignment to ask you, because you mentioned.
Where is he now?
He's in Xi'an, in my hometown. Yeah, and I think he's sleeping now. But I asked this question because you mentioned you want to raise your children you want them to root in some place, and actually he raised me like this in Xi'an. He wanted me to root there, but I was so rebellious. I went abroad at a very young age, and now I was like a nomad, a global citizen. And in German, there's a word "Fernweh" that explains your longing to go to a far place, that so far that you never hear from your family. You want to present yourself to the world and explore everything out there. So how can you, how do you see this? I think Andreas might have similar questions or similar thoughts.
Okay.
And also I have the follow-up question to the...
Is this question from your dad?
Yes.
Oh.
But the second is from me. And how
I think it's your question. It's not your dad's question.
I think, yeah, because he always felt very sad when he read Dear Andreas, and how what's the difference between you and him.
Thank you. Thank you. I think the feeling of in one place is not at all a matter of where you are physically. It's where your heart, your soul is. You can move around anywhere in the world, and you could be flying every day, moving every other year, physically. It really is a matter of whether your heart feels settled. So when we are talking about this 身心脱臼, it's not talking about that you should stay in your village and you never go. I don't think that's it at all. It really is when your heart is so stable, so self-assured and comfortable with a home, then you can go anywhere physically. You don't feel lost. The difference, I could probably use an analogy to explain that. It's like you are a flying kite. 你是一个风筝. And if you are a kite with the thread cut, then you float. But if you are a kite which could fly freely, and yet you have a thread which you think is fast, it's very tight, knowing where that thread is. So these are the two different conditions. It doesn't really, it's a matter of the heart and the soul. It's not a matter of where your body is. Yeah. Okay.
It's an interesting image in terms of Freiheit, because I guess I would always have thought that the kite was cut, was frei, was free to fly wherever they want to go.
My worst imagination of a nightmare is what, you know? To get on the balloon, and then it's cut. That's not Freiheit. That's not. Okay.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, another.
Do we have more questions from the floor?
Okay.
Well, if not, I mean, I was going to ask you a question, but I could also use the last few minutes to thank you, and I think we will do that in a moment. I mean, compassion, you said, is one of your answers, but it seems to me that in the book, and to me, in the book, actually, the most important parts, and that's the question I wanted to ask you. The Chinese doesn't have the philosophical journey as a subtitle. But it is a philosophical journal if you go through the different parts, which have these very short poems by Lung Ying-tai. I didn't know that Lung Ying-tai is also a poet, that are extremely philosophical, and that all speak about seeing in different ways, about being able to see differently because you start to think differently, because you start to see something else because somebody is saying something to you that you had never been thinking about, or because you're actually you don't have a through road. You don't know where you can go. So there are these sort of little posts in the book that basically open a door to 5 or 6 chapters, short chapters that will come afterwards. Go buy the book, it's very, very good. And if you just read, actually, those doors, you will be on a philosophical journey that will open up your eyes. And so I thought it was about seeing that you were talking about in this book. And that actually seeing and hearing, and so that will come back to Zhuangzi, and Lao Tzu, right? All these sort of Taoist ideas of, in order to really hear, you need to use your eyes. In order to really see, you need to use your mouth, and so on and so forth. So it's always the wrong organ, right, that's actually doing the right thing. And this is what you actually have taught me. She was my first teacher of Taiwan literature and global literature. And so I want to thank you very, very, very much for opening up these worlds of seeing differently, hearing differently, tasting differently, knowing differently. That was...
Some things stay forever. When I look at Barbara, you know, when she sits down there and when I give the lecture, I see her face there. But actually, there's a double vision. I always see her face when she was 20 years old. Always, always. Für immer und immer. And you pointed out something really very important. Yes, the Chinese version is only 大武山下. But if you turn around, Barbara, the kind of a description of the novel, it says in Chinese, 深山有野兽，小镇有鬼神，植物有记忆，动物有灵魂。大武山下是一次对于爱和生命的思辨跋涉。How would you translate that? There are animals in the depths of the mountains, and there are gods and ghosts in the smallest town, and all plants have their own memories, all animals have their souls. So this book is a philosophical journey about love and life in Chinese, but it's not in the title. But in a way, so when it's described or the title is a philosophical journey, I said yes immediately. Yes, it's so accurately caught the spirit of the book. Yes, I want to thank Monika again. I want to thank the forever 20-year-old Barbara. And in our both of our hearts and many of yours, perhaps we also have that for Emma there, Rudolf Wagner as well. Thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.